Okay, hi. Um, we're going to wait another minute or two in case some people come in late. Okay, looks like most of the class is here, so let's get started. Can you guys all hear me okay? Yep, all right. So a couple of things, right? So the videos the video links that you sent to me, I've redistributed. Uh, um, those are fair game for the exam tomorrow, so you need to watch them. And I suggest you take some brief notes of each presentation. This is the same thing that we do if we were in class anyway. You're just doing it remotely. Let's see. The exam tomorrow is obviously open book and open note and whatever you want to do. And I'm going to give you some relatively open-ended questions rather than having you just basically repeat calculations that you did in the homeworks. I'd rather give you some broader scenarios that you can think through and write about. So there really won't be um, there'll be maybe a little bit of number crunching, but there won't be much. It's more about figuring out ways to apply conceptually the things that we've talked about. Um, you hopefully watched Cadillac Desert, those videos, which were meant to supplement um, the the portions of the book that I didn't have you read, or to supplement the portions of the book that I did have you read, I should say. And so that's fair game. Questions related to Cadillac Desert, more particularly to the videos than the book, but maybe also the book. Those are fair game, as is Cadillac Desert. Excuse me, as is the Controlled Nature, as are the readings, the shorter readings that I had you do on things like subsidence and um, acid mine drainage and uh, arsenic in Bangladesh and that sort of thing. So everything is fair game. But again, it's not going to be matching or short answer or true false. And it's really not going to be much in the way of calculations. It's going to be more about sort of putting the pieces together. So I will post the exam to Moodle tomorrow morning. I don't know, probably by, I guess maybe by 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. Central Time. And you can write it out by hand and then photograph it if you want to do diagrams or something, or you can type it all up, however you want to do it. It will be due in my inbox and will only be counted and accepted if it's in my inbox by 10 p.m. Central Time. You'll have whatever 13 hours to do it, which will give you way more time than you would need. But that way, if you have, depending on what your schedule is, you'll be able to get to it. And I'll make sure that I'll include that in an email. So I'll have it posted sometime around 9 a.m. Central Time tomorrow, and it's due in my email inbox by 10 p.m. tomorrow. Got it? I will be checking email pretty regularly throughout the day. So if when you're taking the exam, you run into something that you don't understand, there's some question that you maybe is worded unclearly to you, rather than taking a stab at what you think it means, work on something else and send me an email asking for clarification. And if it's a really, it's very likely that if you don't understand it, other people in the class don't understand it. So I'll just send an email to everybody in the class saying, you know, when you get to it, question 5, what I meant here was this. Okay. All right. So that's that. In terms of what we're going to do now, I thought what we do is I will field any questions you guys have about the material, about certain calculations, about certain concepts, about certain readings, about whatever you want. And this is not mandatory, I'm recording it, and I will post this when we're done. So if for some reason you feel like you got it and you don't want to stick around, you're more than welcome to tune out. Or if you want to just check in on it later. But if you have particular questions, now's a good time to do it. Does anybody have any?
What would you want us to want the main takeaway from this course to be?
I don't think there's a single main takeaway, Joby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that the flow rate calculations is the most important math from the course?
Well, I mean, I would say that the Darcy's law equation, Darcy's law in one dimension, which is little q equals, you know, k dh dx, right? That the velocity of water is calculated as the hydraulic conductivity times the hydraulic gradient. That's a really important equation to know in the world, because it also governs, as we discussed, the flow of heat. It's the same equation for the flow of heat. It's the same equation for the diffusion of ions in solution. And so that's just a fundamental equation you should know. It doesn't take much to convert that into Darcy's law in 3 dimensions, because you just multiply it by cross-sectional area, right? The other equation that we covered that's important to know is the Manning equation, and that's a little bit more empirically, meaning experimentally determined, but it's still, in terms of, it is kind of to surface water what Darcy's law is to groundwater. So I would say the Manning equation and Darcy's law are the two. If you have to pick 2, those would be the 2 big ones. Yeah. Oh, and I need you to email me right after this or during this call we're doing now, if you intend to take the class for a grade. Because if you do, we need to set up a time, because part of your exam will be oral, as we talked about early on. So we have to set up a time to do that, and that means arranging your schedule and my schedule and that sort of thing. So if I don't get an email from you in the next, let's say, what time is it? 2 my time. So if I don't get it by 4 o'clock today, then I'm going to assume you're not taking the class for a grade. What did you guys think of the Cadillac Desert videos? Do you enjoy them?
Yeah, they were cool. Like, I never really realized how much, like, everything screwed up in the politics.
Yeah. Yeah, that Floyd Dominy's an interesting character too. Quite an arrogant guy.
I enjoyed a lot of the multiple perspectives, instead of it just kind of being presented through one, like, narrator voice.
I'm also surprised at, like, how Central Park was allowed to be destroyed. That really surprised me when it came to the Owens because Theodore Roosevelt made that a national park, didn't he? Or at least that's what I think was said in the
Joby, you're kind of cutting out. I was having a hard time hearing you.
Owens was turned into a salt flat. That area was supposed to be a national park, and I'm surprised that was allowed to happen. Yeah.
Well, any other questions about the material?
Gabby had one in the chat for you.
Thanks. Let's see. Can we discuss a little bit of things fall apart in the book? Where's another place on earth facing the same issues as Texas regarding salinity and crops?
They mentioned Iran, right?
Yeah, I mean the Middle East and North Africa. So one of the things that's happening climatologically that in your lifetimes is very likely going to become a big deal is that the dry zones of the mid latitudes, like 30 degrees north and south. If you look at a map and you look at about 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south, there's this, for the most part, not perfectly, but there's this band of desert that goes across the world. And it's because there's this warm, wet air rising at the equator, like this is north and south, warm, wet air rising, and it fans out and it sinks at about 30 degrees. So that dry air is descending over central Australia and over the Sahara and so forth. And there's evidence that because of global warming, that sinking air is moving further and further out towards the poles. And it's going to take places like Sydney, Australia, and Perth, Australia, and maybe southern France and Spain, and begin to really dry them out. And in places like that are already kind of on the margins water-wise, they rely a lot on agriculture. On irrigation. And so if you don't do it properly, as things dry out, you begin to get more and more threatened with these issues of salination. So all along the subtropics, that's a zone to keep an eye on for.
Ron, I have a question.
Yeah, and okay.
So are the presentations that you had us upload this morning?
Yeah.
Are they going to be on the final exam? Like, do we have to watch everyone's, or?
Yeah, you should watch everybody's. They're supposed to be about 5 or 7 minutes long, and there are about 15 of them. So that's, it's an hour and a half or so worth of watching.
Okay.
And it's, like I said, it's fair game for the exam. And, the idea is as well that it's not just so that I can test you on it, but reading these real life hydrogeological papers and or having them explained to you so you can actually see what real hydrogeologists are doing, I think is an interesting way to apply a little bit or see how what you've learned is applied.
Okay.
And I haven't watched them yet. I've just skimmed a couple, and the ones I've seen are clearly presented, and so they should be quite accessible to everybody.
I have a question about our grades. Is there any way that we could get an estimate of what our grade is before we decide if we want to take it as a grade or pass fail?
Well, let's see. What do you have? Well, I mean, so originally the class was going to be credit, no credit for everybody. And in the beginning of the class, I said, if you want to take it for a grade, you can. And a couple of people reached out to me and said they'd like to do it. And most or all of them have now decided not to take it for a grade. So I think unless you had reached out to me sooner, I mean, I'll be happy to give you your grades, your scores, but unless you'd reached out to me sooner, I don't think I'm going to be turning it around now and doing a case-by-case basis for everybody.
Okay.
About deciding grade or credit.
Okay.
and I will get you your scores, your grades for the Reisner paper, just so you guys know how we're doing it. Turning in basically the way I'm evaluating the first draft of the Cadillac Desert paper and the first draft of the Reisner paper, you get full points if you turned in a good faith effort on time. Or, I mean, a couple of people turned it in slightly late. That's whatever, that's fine. In terms of the second draft, the final draft, I'm evaluating it more like, I'm actually giving it a grade. So I think each paper is worth, I can't remember how much it's worth, but it's like 30% of the grade for each paper is based on just turning in the first draft. So if you turned it in on time, you did a good faith effort, then you get an A on 30% of it, and then your second part is great. In terms of the presentations, the YouTube presentations, I'll get you those grades tonight, and the Reisner paper and the final exams I'll have done by, what is today? By Thursday, and I'll be happy to send you those scores.
So I joined a little bit later into the call. And I just want to confirm something. Most of this will be conceptual based, the test that is?
Yeah, so I'm not going to have you go back and just repeat calculations that you did in the homeworks.
Okay.
In part because, given that it's an open note and open book exam, you could just, it would be kind of pointless. So what I'd rather have you do is I'm going to give you some kind of, not thought experiments, but kind of some closer to real life scenarios, give you disparate bits of data, and ask you to kind of put the pieces together. So you don't have to, you wouldn't be expected necessarily to do much in the way of calculations. You'd have to sort of tell me, okay, this is what I would do in this scenario.
Okay, so you're looking for applied knowledge.
Much more so, yeah, right. Like I said, if I were to just give you some calculations, use Darcy's law to calculate the groundwater velocity between these 2 points, if you'd never done it before in your life, you could just flip through the homeworks and find the one, the answer key where I did that for you, and just put the numbers in without even knowing what it meant, and you could solve the problem. So I don't see the utility in testing you that way. I'd rather ask you to kind of think more conceptually. So it's a little bit more writing. It's a lot more writing and drawing, and a lot less just number crunching.
If we're doing drawings, can we draw it on a piece of paper instead of using MS Paint or something like that?
Yeah, Joby, I was saying that earlier too. You're more than welcome to do the whole thing by hand, or you can type it up and then just draw the sketches. But you have to figure out a way to get them to me. You can photograph them and send them to me as a JPEG, or you could scan them, or whatever you want. But yeah, I hate drawing on the computer. I'd much rather do it by hand, and that's fine.
Awesome.
Gabby has another question in the chat.
Thank you. So Gabby asks, I may have misunderstood, for the oral exam portion, are there specific topics, or is it pre-game? So the only people having the oral exam are the people that contacted me in the beginning of the class to say that they want to take this for a grade, and they have maintained their desire to take it for a grade. And so if any of you fall in that category, the oral exam will be free game. It'll be, just us discussing the material.
Are you gonna include some of the, I think it was the readings that we had, not the readings, but certain parts of the class, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think it was the second week.
Some of the handouts?
Some of the readings, I forget, it was on some website. I'm pretty sure.
So I asked you to read a subsidence paper, acid mine drainage, Gulf hypoxia, groundwater pumping and arsenic, Reisner, Cadillac Desert.
I'm thinking of the Feder readings.
Oh, no. That was there to supplement if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper, but I'm not going to ask you to deal with it.
Okay.
The textbook. Yeah. No. So if for some reason you haven't gotten your research paper in, your presentation, you need to do that in the next couple of hours so that everybody has a chance to view it. And I strongly recommend that you put something together, even if you're anxious about it not being perfect, because not completing one of the major assignments is a big issue. Well, it looks like you guys are okay. So we'll wrap this up. If you have questions, again, I'll be checking my email pretty regularly this afternoon and evening, and you're more than welcome to email me with questions, or we can set up a Zoom conference if you'd like to talk more rapidly about stuff. Like I said, the exam will be posted by around 9 in the morning tomorrow Central Time, and you'll have until 10 p.m. when it's got to be in my inbox. And again, it's not designed to be a 13-hour exam. I'm just giving you that amount of time. And it's open book and open note, and you should contact me if you have any questions while you're taking it, if you don't understand anything. And you should get your video presentations up to YouTube if you haven't done that already. Okay. All right. Well, good luck tomorrow. And like I said, I'll be happy to talk to anybody who wants to reach out with questions. Okay. All right. See you guys later.